Hi, everyone. Good evening, afternoon, good morning, anywhere, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Wednesday evening show. It's going to be a pleasure to spend the some time with you. I can see our special guest is in the background there. I can see him. And we are putting this one out actually across all the streams. Just for once, I've decided, okay, we'll stick it out on YouTube. We go with the anti-free speech channels. So hello YouTube, hello Facebook, and of course on X, Twitter, Rumble, Getter. So we're across all the platforms, coming at you from as many places as is possible. So thanks very much for being with us this evening. As I say, great conversation I think lined up. So I think you'll enjoy this one, and stick with me in this one. Just a couple of things before we kick off. I just want to make you aware of the fact that our live event, which we have planned for London next month in November, is going to be actually on January 30th. So stick January 30th in your diary. Tomorrow night on the live podcast, I will reveal our special guests. So, yep, we're going to start 2025 with a bang. Hopefully, it will be also involve a post-Trump victory party as well. We'll try and see if that works out for us. I'm not sure if it will. I hope it does. So we'll get to that there. I hope you enjoyed the chat with Dr. Robert Malone that we had on Monday evening. Isn't he a great guy? Really interesting personality, and a great contributor to the international debate. One of the things that most interests me is education, and the problems that sort of afflict the field of education. So Chris Davies, just wait. And with regard to that, I can't think of anyone better to talk to than our next guest, who some of you will probably be aware of, I'm sure. Some of you Brits might not be. So it's my pleasure to, without any further ado, bring him into the studio and welcome, please, Mr. Alex Newman.
Hey, how's it going, David? Great to be here.
Hey, Alex, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for giving us your time. Really appreciate that one there. As I say, I'm sure our American friends will be very familiar with you. Maybe our British and European friends, maybe not just quite as much. So, obviously, Alex, I know that you are an accomplished investigative journalist and author. I know that you're spokesman for this new movie that we'll talk about as well. You've written some really interesting books, which is what I want to get to as well. But can I just start at the top with we're what, 2 weeks or so out from what is a very important moment in history, I think, namely the presidential election. How are you feeling about it 2 weeks out?
Well, I think if we had an honest election, and I know YouTube's not going to like it that we say this, but if we had an honest election, Donald Trump would absolutely crush Kamala Harris. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Even the liberal polls and the liberal models are showing a huge victory for Donald Trump. We were actually at his house last night for a movie premiere. And one of the things that was really interesting, we're talking to Hollywood celebrities, and, Hollywood is notoriously anti-Republican, anti-conservative, pro-liberal, pro-Democrat, and even these guys from Hollywood, Sylvester Stallone's brother, say, no, you wouldn't believe how much support there is for Donald Trump in Hollywood. So you've got this incredible coalition forming that transcends all the previous political boundaries and the Overton window that the establishment has tried to set for us in a way that's bringing all kinds of new people who have never voted before into the political process to support Donald Trump, people who historically have aligned themselves with the left coming out of the woodwork to vote for Donald Trump. So it's a very, very interesting situation. I think Donald Trump is ultimately going to be victorious. If we had an honest election, it would be by unbelievable numbers, as Donald Trump said last night at his house. Yeah. They're going to cheat like hell, but we're going to make our victory too big to rig. So I think that's probably what we're facing. But we know that's just going to be the beginning.
Yeah,
we know that the radical left, the tyrants, the globalists, the Islamists, etc., are not going to just roll over and play dead. They're going to try to unleash as much chaos as they can on our country. So then it'll be phase 2, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the bit that worries me most, Alex, is what happens from November 5th to January 19th, I suppose, between assuming we get a result on the 5th, which we probably won't actually, because I see some of the states are saying it might take them, could be days, maybe weeks before we get a final result. But assuming we get a final result, I agree with you. I would be concerned about what they do then, because let's face it, a Trump victory is a globalist defeat, and the
Yes.
globalists do not like losing. And that's what deeply concerns me. I think they project their own inner weaknesses and demons onto Republicans, onto Trump. And we had the whole January 6th thing. We'll be careful how we say it, because YouTube will give us strike. I love YouTube. But I think, like, in a way, their fantasy might be to have an insurrection of their own. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, there's no question about it that they would try it. We know from the Transition Integrity Project, they hired some of the greatest futurists and scenario planners out there, people like Peter Schwartz, funded by George Soros, led by the pervert Podesta brothers, to figure out what are the most likely scenarios. This was in 2020 when Trump was running against Joe Biden. And the only scenario they had where Trump won an unequivocal, unoverturnable victory, they actually had some plans. They were going to have Washington, Oregon, and California secede from the Union and threaten to blow up the Constitution and demand that we get rid of the Electoral College. So they're not going to just take a Donald Trump victory laying down. They will absolutely go crazy. They will try to unleash a poly crisis on us, try to undermine the U.S. dollar, try to get rid of our border and bring in millions more people. So they're not going to just passively accept this. And I'm actually at the point now, David, where I'm concerned that they might even try something terrible against Kamala, because they know she's not going to be able to win this election. I mean, she's very unpopular. She can't do interviews. She was in the single digits in the Democrat primary in 2020. Nobody voted for her in this primary. They just got Biden to step down. And so, God forbid, somebody do something to her in a way that would make Trump supporters look bad. And I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think anything's outside the realm of possibility. It's really strange. I mean, it's funny you mentioned there the money markets, because one of the things that happened here in the UK, which you may have sort of come across last year, was just for one moment, our Conservative Party accidentally picked a more or less proper Conservative leader called Liz Truss. And she lasted for, I think it was 11 days or something like that. And she was undermined by essentially the financial markets coming along and cratering the aspects of interest rates and stuff like that. They shot up through the roof, and that they got rid of her just almost instantly. And it was globalism using money markets to take down someone who probably was ideologically reasonably close, I would suggest, to Trump. So I would fear that as well, Alex, when it comes to Donald Trump.
Yep. So it's going to be a very interesting next few weeks. And the World Economic Forum has been preparing for the possibility of a poly crisis for some time. And I think that may be the next play, right? Okay, Donald Trump is the president. Oh, look what you dummy voters did. Now the economy's crashing all around you, and there's civil war in the streets, and World War III is breaking out, and the Chi-Coms are invading Taiwan. And see, you dumb Americans, if only you had just done what you were told and voted for the good globalist puppet, you wouldn't be in this mess. So I hope people are hanging on for the ride. And I think this will be a global phenomenon, even if it does affect America harder than anybody.
Yeah, and also just to say, to finish in this one, whilst this is an American election, I can assure you, Alex, that there's many of us else, like here in the UK, who fervently wish for a Donald Trump victory, because we see it as existential. If Trump doesn't get in, if it doesn't happen, it's really dark times ahead, because we've got a horrible authoritarian sort of Marxist Labour government here in the UK. You see the European Union, you see all of that, and Trump is, I mean, that's the thing that they fear most. So I really want Trump to win, if for no other reason, just to really piss them off, really, but we shall see. You mentioned dumb Americans. That's a good starting point, right? That's a good thanks for that one. I'll use that. Dumb Americans. I want to show you, Alex, to start with. I saw this tweet. I think you'll be interested in it. If we can bring this tweet up, and it is to do with the views of millennials. So can we just millennials even? So can we just bring it up there in the background? We seem to be having a problem getting it. Don't know why that should be. Okay, hopefully we'll be able to find it. I don't know why it's not there. But let me anyway. A number of millennials were polled, Alex. They were polled concerning Did they think that if you misgender someone, right? If you misgender someone, is that a crime? Should you be locked up for that? And remarkably, I think we've got it now. It's coming along now. You'll be able to see it, so everyone can see it here. And for those listening, you just have to trust us. But there you go. Should misgendering someone be a criminal offence, Alex? 44% of millennials, yeah, lock them up, potentially. Only 31% said no, and 25% said they weren't sure. That worries me, Alex. How do you react to that kind of poll?
It is very concerning. I'm a millennial, and that's always embarrassing to admit because people assume you're an idiot for obvious reasons. But you look at the data across the board, and millennials have views that are very problematic. In fact, we will not be able to perpetuate civilization with the current paradigm that exists in the minds of millennials. You see that for the first time in all American history, millennials are the first generation ever in our history where only a minority identify as Christians. And this in a country where as recently as the 1990s, we had 95+% of Americans identifying as Christians. We're now down among millennials to less than 50%. And among those, you talk to them and you realize very quickly they don't have the first clue about what that even means. And they just say they're Christian because mom and dad took them to church. You look at their political views. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation commissioned a poll some years ago. They found that more than 2/3 of American millennials, 70% to be exact, said they would vote for socialists in the future. Obviously, freedom, civilization are not compatible with socialism. I always tell people, I'm born in Miami. I always tell people 90 miles from here, you can go check out a socialist utopia, see how much you like it. And then, when you come back, kiss the floor, please, and apologize to us all for your stupidity. So millennials are a big problem. And, it's, and unfortunately, David, the next generation is coming after us. The Gen Z and stuff is even worse. So we've got a major problem. We're not going to survive at this rate.
Yeah, exactly. That's which really brings us to, I think, one of your areas of you've done a tremendous amount of work in, I know, and that is in terms of schools, education. What has been going on there? And I have listened to some of your stuff, Alex, in this one, so I'm kind of familiar with it, but the audience mightn't be fully familiar. But I mean, one of the things that was a real eye opener to me, which I know you've very well explained in your books, is the really, I would put it down as like the communist origins of state schools in America. I don't think people understand that. Oh, well, they should obviously understand that. But can you just take us through that very sort of succinctly in terms of how state schools, or as we would call them, I don't know what your term for them is, are a real and present danger?
Yeah, that's been an area of focus for me for over a decade now. My latest book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, How Government Schools are Waging War on Faith, Family, and Freedom, and How to Stop It. It's been endorsed by General Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's national security advisor. It's been endorsed by Pete Hegseth, co-host of Fox and Friends, Alex Jones, Kirk Cameron, a lot of great Americans in the military, the media.
Yeah.
And what I did in there, and we also describe this in depth in the new documentary, Beneath Sheep's Clothing.
Yeah.
We show that this is actually a feature, not a bug, right? And you have a very common refrain among conservatives in America that the system is broken and we need to fix it. And like, no, you're not understanding the problem here. When you understand why the system was built, you understand that it's working very, very well. They're capturing upwards of 80 to 90% of our children. So we have a system that was designed, engineered, even invented by people who wanted to turn young Americans away from God, away from the Bible, away from their country, away from their families, and away from the principles of freedom, which this country is based on. And that was the purpose for creating this. And the documentation, the evidence is overwhelming. This is actually indisputable. We've got all the source notes in my book. We go through a lot of it in the movie. So I would encourage people to get a copy of this. We even have it in an audiobook now because this is something that has a global impact, right? The American model is actually what was exported around the world. And so we trace the genesis of this through to today, where most young Americans are not even proficient in reading, math, et cetera. They are very proficient in climate change propaganda and gender idiocy. But again, civilization will not survive unless we address this incredible crisis.
Yeah, and you're right, Alex. I mean, although it is, and you're right off it from an American point of view, it's actually a global problem. It's exactly the same in the UK. We've got we see exactly the same trend but it's not really a trend, is it? Because you're dead right. It's the things that are wrong, that have gone wrong, were designed to go wrong. It's not like this is just, as you say, a bug that somehow come. No, no, no. This is what they wanted. It's essentially, but it's gotten worse, Alex. I mean, I can, over the last 30 years, I'm a bit older than you. The changes seem to be getting faster and faster. The people in schools, the teachers, I mean, how do you even explain some of the people who are teaching children? What chance have those children got when, some of the freaks that are in charge of their education have got them all day?
Yeah, and parents need to understand that, right? You have access to your children about 1/4 of the amount of time that the government has them if you have your children enrolled in a public school. And a lot of that time is consumed with everybody in the family staring at their little screen and pushing buttons and stuff. So, your influence compared to the government's influence on the minds, hearts, and souls of your children is going to be minuscule, if there's any at all. So we have to recognize that our children are being really destroyed. They're being drawn away from everything good. And I believe this is the preeminent crisis facing the entire Western world. We made a catastrophic mistake by trusting the government to educate our children. That was never the government's job. The government's job is to punish evil, to uphold and protect our rights. It's not to babysit your kids. It's not to do any of those things. And unless and until we repent of that and turn away from that and retake control as parents of the education of our children, we're going to keep going down this road until we hit rock bottom. And I'm afraid that, unfortunately, is closer than most people would like to acknowledge.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's funny because it's like it seems to start in America and then it comes across to us. And some of the things that I see in American classrooms, we now see them, Alex, in British classrooms as well. It's the same. It's the LGBTQ plus indoctrination. It's drag queen story hour, all this stuff, which is essentially an abomination. And yet the schools don't seem unhappy with it. And yet we've got our kids leaving age, we have like primary school. And when they leave a primary school age 11, around about 1 in 4 of them is functionally illiterate, right? So they're illiterate, but they could probably tell you the 87 different genders that Facebook recognizes, It's a bit worrying. Yeah. So, how did it get to that point? Just a successful march through the institutions. What was it, Alex, that got it to that point?
So it's been a long process, and if you start at the beginning, the first guy to seriously propose that the government ought to educate our children was a communist. This was before Karl Marx even came along. He believed that we needed to de-Christianize society so that we could move toward this utopian vision he had, where we'd get rid of private property, we'd get rid of the family, and we'd all live in a big commune, I guess. And to his credit, he actually believed this silliness. He bought a big piece of land and created a commune called New Harmony in the state of Indiana. And obviously it failed because communism is ridiculous. But he came away with the conclusion that it failed, not because communism is ridiculous, but because these children had been raised into adults in a Christian society where people were, he believed, individualistic and selfish and too focused on these moral commands, these institutions that God had ordained. So that system ended up taking root in Prussia. And then it was re-imported back into the United States. And there's a whole process for how this came about. And it took root in the United States under Horace Mann, another utopian who wanted to get the Bible out of the classroom, who wanted to equalize all men using the school system that he was importing from Prussia. And then, of course, we had super capitalists like John D. Rockefeller team up with communists like John Dewey, the founder of our public school system, to weaponize this whole thing against us. So this has been a long time coming. We're now at least 5 or 6 generations into the overwhelming majority of Americans being indoctrinated by government. And of course, it gets worse with each generation, right? I mean, if you had told people 20, 30 years ago, they'd be teaching kids that they might have been born in the wrong body and that castration would solve that problem for them, nobody would have believed you. It would have been so crazy. But now we're here. And things that seem absolutely impossible now will seem totally normal and routine to people 1 generation from now. Right, already in California, in many places, they're teaching people that, pedophilia is normal and it's existed in history. It's just a different sexual orientation. So they're moving very rapidly in an extreme direction. And I can't encourage parents strongly enough to protect their children.
Yeah, it's love is love. Isn't that right, Alex? Love is love. Don't be so judgmental. I mean, you said it earlier. Society can't survive this, can it? There's no way that we can continue down this road and be a functional, civilized society.
Yeah, that's right. We are very rapidly losing the veneer of civilization that has, of course, resulted from Christianity, resulted from Western traditions, and that, of course, has produced the liberty, the prosperity, the security that we have all taken for granted for so long. And what a lot of the people, hacking at the branch here don't realize that they're sawing off the branch that they're sitting on. They want to keep the human rights, they want to keep the peace, the security, the prosperity without the conditions that made that possible. And of course, that's impossible. So we're headed for a catastrophe here. And the sooner people figure that out, the better.
And can we talk then a wee bit about? So there's a new movie which I know you've been involved in, and that I think is really important. Oh, hello to my. We're being joined from one of our Hawaiian regulars. Hi, Donnie girl, good to see you here. In sheep's clothing, I think is the beneath sheep's clothing, I should say. And so tell us about that, Alex. What is the purpose of that? What's it trying to achieve?
So it's a movie that aims to expose the communist takeover of the United States and various institutions, right? So it looks at, for example, the infiltration of the church by communists. It looks at the infiltration of education by the communists. It looks at the infiltration of government and critical institutions by communists. And it shows, I think, very clearly that we are on the verge of calamity unless people wake up to what's going on here. So I encourage people to watch the movie. You can go to beneathsheepsclothing.movie, and you can watch that movie. You can stream it there online right now if you choose. And I encourage people to do this. It's one of the best tools that I have seen in our arsenal for exposing these evildoers. And I do believe that exposing them is one of the most important things we can be doing to turn this around.
Yeah, I see someone's on the stream here saying that they've watched it and it's very good. So there you go. There's an endorsement from one of my viewers, Alex. But you're right. It's so important that this stuff is exposed, and I think it's brilliant that there are those people like yourself and others putting out this important kind of critical analysis, really, because we face full on communism, really. I mean, people talked about, Kamala. Is she a communist or is she just remarkably stupid? Which is it, or both?
I believe it's actually both. She's what we call a red diaper baby. I mean, she is literally a child of communist parents, of communist radicals who were communists when she was born, and so she has been in radical circles her entire life. And of course, she's also, and I mean this with all due respect, remarkably stupid. I mean, she's clearly got a very low IQ. She's clearly not capable of speaking elegantly. She's clearly not capable of coming up with sensible policy positions, or even pretending to have sensible policy positions that would be appealing publicly without her teleprompter. And so she obviously doesn't have a lot of brain power. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just an observation. But far more concerning than stupidity to me is the radicalism, the extremism. I mean, she has been associating herself with revolutionaries and Maoists her entire life, people who despise everything that makes up our nation. And so I would encourage people to do the research here and this is not a problem that's unique to the United States, by the way. This is happening in Canada with Justin Trudeau. It's happening in the UK with your crazy prime minister. And so we have this problem all across the Western world as a result of, as we showed, the deliberate communist infiltration of key institutions, especially education, the church, and others.
Well, but I mean the way I look upon it, certainly here anyway, that long march through the institutions, it started, I think, in the 60s. Don't know if you'd agree or not, but here it did, and it reached the point where they're captured. They're pretty much every organ of the establishment is captured, all of it. The church, in some regards as well. Certainly, that we've seen in the UK, the judiciary's been captured. Education's been captured, Alex. It's pretty grim, but they've got to this point, and I mean, this is where I take my hat off to them. I mean, they may be a bunch of authoritarian thugs, but they are consistent.
Yes, no question about it. And we're seeing this trend all across the Western world. Much of the rest of the world has already fallen. China, obviously, being a premier
Oh,
example.
yeah.
But we cannot allow that to happen in the United States. The U.S. is kind of the last man standing here. And if the U.S. goes down, it's going to be a catastrophe for the whole world. So in the last couple of minutes that we have here, I really would recommend to people, don't just write angry posts on it on Facebook. Get yourself educated, find out how this happened, how to protect yourself, beginning, of course, with your own family, with your own children, and then take deliberate and clear action to warn others, right? If you saw that there was a fire heading towards someone, if you saw somebody was on the train tracks and the train was about to run them over, it would be your moral obligation to sound the alarm. We are in precisely such a scenario right now, and it's time for everybody to get involved if you want to preserve civilization, preserve freedom, preserve the middle class, and all those things that we have been so blessed by.
Do you think, Alex, that people should take their kids out of state schools?
I don't think they have any other choice. Frankly, I think it was a mistake to let the government educate our children in the first place. But, I really think it is absolutely urgent. It is one of the most important things that a parent could do right now before almost anything else is get them out, find a good Christian school, get into homeschooling, whatever you need to do to protect them from this wickedness that is coming through the state school system. There's no sacrifice too great.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I agree. I don't see there's any way of saving the state schools. I don't see it. But what I do see is that US state schools are so much worse than UK state schools. But the trajectory for UK state schools, it's exactly the same, Alex, as you say. And it's not just UK, it's Canada, it's Australia, it's the whole New Zealand, God forbid. I mean, all these countries are going down the same route. And it's like, if they get them when they're young, that's what produces polls like the one we looked at the start of this show, where, if you misgender someone, then, hey, listen, why shouldn't you go to prison? And I mean, that's what millennials say. Then what is it, Gen Z? I mean, I presume they would favor execution for such wrong thinking.
Yep. It's a frightening prospect, folks, and time is running out. So get involved now while you still can.
Okay. Well, Alex, listen, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, I would commend, check out Alex's books. Check Alex's site over in Liberty Sentinel. Check out the movie Beneath Sheep's Clothing. And basically, the best thing we can do on our side is to inform ourselves. I know it's a cliche, but information is power. Knowledge is power. And if you check out the different resources that Alex brings us, I think you'll find that very encouraging. Alex, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks again so much for giving us your time. And I hope to catch up with you again. And let's hope that next month brings good news from the land of the free. And we'll all be hoping, keeping fingers crossed and every other thing, that Donald Trump does prevail. And that even if it upsets Facebook and YouTube and all the rest of the usual suspects, it will be a moment of hope for the rest of the world. Because frankly, if you guys fall, we're all going down. I don't know where I'll be heading off into the woods or somewhere. But look, again, Alex, thanks so much for your time. And thanks everybody for listening to this. That's it from Alex and myself for tonight. Good night.